the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Hi, Andrew Chalfman here. Public education, as I've said for years and years and years, was designed from the outset to be a disaster. And I'm going to play something here. It's interesting to watch a lot of people come into an understanding of this. They're catching up. For a long time, we just wanted to believe that our predecessors had good intentions and they created systems. We learn how to adapt ourselves to them. And we don't often question what the results are, but then when you look around a wasteland experience at the kind of education people have received, just talking to people at a checkout counter at a grocery store, you'll find quickly that the education system that we have has not been sufficient. You have entire generations of young people who have grown to be adults, young adults, who are not equipped for intelligent, critical thinking. And the first fault is culture, what influences you see, what value systems are portrayed in like a commercial society. You certainly don't want corporate interests looking for a short-sighted profit to determine what the value system is of a culture. Rather, you need an economy that represents value in products purchased to satisfy what it is that human society wants. You want market conditions to shape the demand, not the corporate side. And that's the danger that you get from someone like a Rockefeller. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. When you talk about the origins of public education, you have to remind everybody what Bill Gates tried to do with COVID and tried to do with net carbons and climate change and all kinds of things. I mean, the guy fell off his rocker for sure, lost his mind. Just because he's rich doesn't mean he knows what he's doing. He might have been good at one thing and was paid proportionally in the market for that by becoming wealthy, but you don't want him shaping policy or the trajectory of human desire. And for that matter, you don't want Elon Musk to do the same, or anybody has acquired a lot of power to supplement the traditional role of a king in a culture. It's okay to make a lot of money and enjoy the fruits of the labor and have a score on a scoreboard. It shows that you've been very successful, but you don't get to shape the policy for everybody else. And that's why you have to have a political layer of sensical behavior to ensure that a representative republic shapes how you construct your society. But the public education system is the next big problem, because if you go to school and you learn a bunch of bad things, the cultural influences will only support them. But if the public education system then reflects those bad ideas, then you got a real problem. And there have been lots of wealthy people who have tried to shape public education because they wanted good intentions from their perspective. Bill Gates had good intentions with COVID. He wanted everybody vaccinated, and the vaccines proved to be not well thought out and catastrophic for some people. There's a lot of bad things that went on with it. The COVID protocols, the distancing, all the things that were shaped by Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates during COVID made crisis, because it was a crisis created by gain of function research at a Wuhan lab in China, a political rival who wanted to sink the United States during an election year where they didn't like the president that was in office. They wanted to tank his economy, and they wanted to do that anyway with the United States. And you had these healthcare experts and wealthy people like Bill Gates who wanted to tie it to climate change and all kinds of other elements, and it turned out to be very dangerous. And that is certainly the case with public education as it was set up initially. From the very beginning, it was constructed incorrectly, and it taught kids all the wrong things, and it has taught now generations and generations of people everything incorrectly. And so I'm going to play a clip here. These clips are quite common now on YouTube, TikTok, even with their social media sharing. People are now understanding that they've been hoodwinked socially all their lives, and it started in their coveted school experiences. So here's a couple minutes of I think somebody who's found that all the buttons clicked, and they came to a realization of just how bad the public school system was designed at the outset. So let's listen to it.
John D. Rockefeller was one of the richest men in the entire world from the oil industry. And in 1903, he funded the General Education Board with a famous quote of saying, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers." The General Education Board's main objective was to create schools that focused on obeying authority, following rules, memorizing, not thinking, and breeding you to work 9-to-5 jobs for elite corporations. That is why we see the mundane subjects in school of things like math, English, and other subjects. And I mean, even look at our schools. They look like prisons. But here's where things get really messed up. John D. Rockefeller also funded big pharma and medical schools, with the initiative being from taking people from natural healing remedies towards pharmaceutical-based care. And from this, he created a perfect system. The schools create the workers. They work forever, which makes them sick. Then they have to take pharmaceutical drugs to stay alive, and from that, he makes endless money. Our education system is really just a monopoly. It is breeding workers so that the elites keep making more money. This is why it is more important than ever for us to wake up and choose differently moving forward. John D. Rockefeller.
All right, so the guy talking in that video is a young fella. He coming aware of these things. The emphasis is on making money, and the cabal of relationships. I don't think John D. Rockefeller intended harm. I don't think he woke up and said, "I'm going to destroy the world," just like Bill Gates didn't. I think he was very successful and wanted to share the wealth based on his point of view. But here's the problem with people and their interactions with other people. Sanity is an exercise. You have to maintain sanity throughout your lifetime. And there are periods, most people will go through periods of insanity, where they're the things you think about when you're playing in the front yard as a kid, your value systems as they form then collides with the reality of the shared experience. And often your sanity can be ruptured in that process. There's a lot of people who hit the brick wall in their 30s and 40s, and they have moments of insanity, years of insanity. Maybe they always lose their sanity, and they're never quite the same people again because tragedy, deaths of parents perhaps, or major illnesses. Kids didn't turn out the way you wanted them to, and there's major disappointments. Some people put all their life into a career, and the career gets pulled out from underneath them, and they just never get back. And so the problem and Rockefeller had at this time a lot of money. He wanted to share it. He thought from his perspective, here's how to make a good society. Educate them, teach them to have a good job, serve the companies that are evolving with good compliant workers, and everything will be great. And on paper, to him, from a position of sanity, it probably sounded awesome. And he thought he was helping people in the process. But it turned out to be a monstrous critique of a thought process that was done in a vacuum. And it's exactly what was wrong with Bill Gates and COVID, and all the various wealthy people who got involved in the climate change initiative and tried to shape society in a way that they thought was correct. And if you're not letting the market determine it, which is the invisible hand of Adam Smith, which is an element of psychology and marketplace behavior that can be grounded in the will of the universe to perpetuate itself in a productive way. Instead, you have those same elements that say, I'm wealthy, I know best, I have some kind of divine knowledge, and then the sanity starts losing its tethering, and they fly off the handle and create a bad system. And people who want to be associated with that wealth because they want an easy job, or they want to maybe, just like a dog, trickle behind their master's feet and hope that breadcrumbs fall out of their hands and they can pick it up. That's what a lot of people do with wealthy people. They hang around them and hoping to get some breadcrumbs, and that they don't have to work too hard to go get themselves. So they find themselves nodding their heads, yes, oh, Mr. Rockefeller, that sounds like a great idea. Oh, the Dewey system is the way to go. We want to do all these great things with these academics who have come up with this idea that this is how the world should be shaped. And this is how we should build our education system, around these core criteria. And then we're going to associate with them teacher unions that have radical leftist politics and have them drive even a limited skill set of what knowledge is acquired in these places. And we're going to hope it all comes out right. And you're going to teach mass society that way, and you're going to fund it off property taxes. And people have come to a point where they realize that has been a horrible thing. It's been a terrible scam. The entire public education system needs a complete overhaul and reevaluation for all the reasons that this young guy here articulated. And it wasn't about just making endless amounts of money at the time that Rockefeller came up with this. And the assumption here was that the entire education system was built to make Rockefeller more money. At the time, he had plenty of money, more money than he could ever spend, and he didn't care much about money, just like Bill Gates didn't. I think they sincerely do care about helping humanity. But that's the same thing from somebody who's lost their mind. Do they have the ability to think critically and determine what's good for anybody, let alone themselves? And then should they be setting public policy? Any questions? No. Only those who survive the rigors of a marketplace and the challenges that go with it, and where they seek validation for success through the shared experience that people provide for them through a free economy. That's how you keep your tethering to what's really going on in the world. But when you become so rich that you no longer can relate to other people, insanity is a persistent ally with a lot of these people. And it's a common challenge that wealthy people do have, is to maintain their bearings with what's normal, because they have abnormal wealth and acquisition to resources, and they lose their mind in the process a lot of times. And so they find themselves in a bubble. And as I say that, I think of a lot of people that I've known over the years who have become untethered because they became very wealthy and lost their ability to relate to people at the grocery store. And so those people should not be coming up with the education policies in a vacuum, and then where they have endless amounts of money to give to people who want free and easy money. Those are the people who design your social mechanisms, and it turns out to be a failure. So even if it's a simplistic view of Rockefeller created the public education system or manipulated the public education system in a way that made him even more money, I don't think Rockefeller cared that much about the money at that point in his life. But he did bring with it the elements that he thought were successful, having good, stable workers, having good companies that ran well, a way to fund your government through taxation and various elements. And you had to have a strong centralized society to do that. And those are the elements that might have made him very wealthy initially. And that's the value systems that were put into public education. But then it didn't teach people to think, didn't teach people to be complete human beings. Solely didn't deal with the philosophy that often comes from having a grounding in a family structure, and the fantasy that then became that the parents weren't able to build those kinds of people who could make good workers, who could have a good, successful society. So government had to take care of itself and push the parents aside, using this public education system to do it. and then they could sustain themselves perpetually into the future. That's the danger to create a system like that, and that's what we find ourselves in public education now doing, is we have a system that is destroying the minds of people, most people. And everybody who's watching this is thinking, well, am I crazy? Do you think I'm nuts? Problem is, we all measure sanity based on our shared experience with other people. And if you're sharing that experience with other crazy people who've been driven that way through the pressures of life and not having intellectual mechanisms to deal with it because public education didn't provide that. And when you're most creative, when you're young, and by the time you hit adolescence and adulthood, you have lost the imagination or the ability, the Peter Pan syndrome, you've lost the ability to reinvent yourself into something that's a much more cohesive human being. And so then it becomes a mass element of catastrophe. And then most people share that same catastrophe. And they might call it a baseline of normal because everybody has normalized catastrophe and insanity because they've lost their bearings to what sanity really is, because they were never taught to begin with. And our public education system instead drives people towards insanity instead of to it. And the longer we allow it to go on, the longer it's going to be a destructive element in the human race. But it's nice to see people like this one in this clip here. There's many more of them like that, starting to put the dots together to understand it for the totality of destroyed experience that public education has turned out to be. Definitely wasn't the dream Rockefeller had of having a upward mobility society and giving everybody a boat to float on, which I believe was his intention from the perspective of someone who lost their bearings. And that tends to be all too common, the problem, which is why you need a representative republic. So if you have people, no one gets too much power over anybody else. And if someone loses their mind and falls off the rocker, you can elect them out and put someone else in who can then manage society. And that's a way that you can maintain this problem without falling off as a civilization with too many crazy people running lives. And there's history's full of kings that were clearly insane and not grounded in rationality, who had power over other people and destroyed a lot of lives in the process. And that's unfortunately what happened with public education. Public education has been a disaster. It was designed to be a disaster, and it's never going to be fixed with more money. It has to be redesigned from the ground up. And if you really want to fix things in society, you got to start there. And anytime we look at this and looking competitive models for public education, that needs to be the scope of the outcome. And that's how you get to scale, by redesigning it for success, not for the failure that was articulated in that video, which hit correctly how wrong the foundations of the system were from the very outset. Teaching all the wrong things for all the wrong reasons to the wrong kind of people, and teaching people to take what their personal initiatives were naturally gifted to them through genetic display and turn them into autonomous followers of a ruler, of a corporate structure that served an economic purpose but not a philosophic one. And then market conditions were driven out of the scope of things and into the hands of people who did not have the right knowledge to create a foundation for others to follow, because it wasn't done by market pressures or conditions. It was done by acquired wealth and the loss of sanity that wealth gave those individuals, who then acquired power over others that they should never have had. And the American checks and balances system, if followed and utilized correctly, would have prevented. In the case of public education, because it has attached tax money to it, and now these radical leftist labor unions that facilitate it only perpetuate what was already broken. It's turned out to be a treacherous disaster. And again, there's nobody in the world that can fix it if you preserve it as it is. It has to be redesigned from the ground up. And that's the only way that education can work if you want to do it on a mass scale. Hard reality, and a lot of people are going to have to come to it, and it's good to see that some people, like this young guy in this video, and I see a lot of people like that, like him, emerging, where they're putting all the dots together and seeing that it makes sense. And the more of these guys that figure it out, the less perpetuation of that destructive context will continue. Because if you really want to save human beings from destructive elements of wrong thinking, you start with the education system. And in this case, you have to redesign it so that more facilitates the values of human beings and not the wacky sentiments of John D. Rockefeller and others who had acquired wealth and lost perspective of what the human race needed. He thought he knew, and because he had become personally wealthy, and that clearly wasn't the criteria that you measure your success by. Anyways, Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day.
Thank you for listening.